Welcome back on the AM show. I'm not going to be mincing words. You know how we do it. It's time for me to share with you my blunt thoughts this morning. Just to let you know, we may not be live on Joy News on Facebook because we're facing some streaming challenges. But as soon as we can get this up, we'll get it on social media for those of you who follow us there. Now, the title, Ghana 4, of my blunt thoughts for today is The Galamsey Circus and Our Professionals' Exodus, the dangerous path Ghana is treading. The Galamsey Circus and Our Professionals' Exodus, the dangerous path Ghana is treading. I'd like to start off my blunt thoughts with a bit of a quote when it comes to governance. And it says, where there is little or no public opinion, there is likely to be bad government, which sooner or later becomes autocratic government. And that's a quote from William Leon Mackenzie King. That is part of why some of us do what we do. Some people may not like it, but it's not about which party. It's not about which friends or this or that or which ethnic group. It's about Ghana. And in the end, we, as part of the doyens of democracy, must do what must be done for our democracy to deliver the goods that democracy, good governance, must deliver. That's why we do what we do. Now, this morning, I want to share my thoughts on those crucial matters, but I also want to start from the Atuesian standpoint and how things have turned out for Atuesian. So if you look at the Capital Bank's Atuesian and his conviction, 15 years is what he's been handed, and he was convicted of stealing over 90 million Ghana cedis of Bank of Ghana's liquidity support to the now defunct Capital Bank, and on the back of his inability to fully pay the said amount back to the state after agreeing to do so despite being afforded the opportunity. Now, what has the charge been? William Atuesian, Reverend Fitzgerald Odonko, and Tetenete, a former managing director of MC Management Services owned by Mr. Essien, were charged with 23 counts of conspiracy, stealing from the 620 million Ghana cedi liquidity support given the bank by the Bank of Ghana to enable it to service its maturing debt. Now, the accused persons, according to the prosecution, opened various bank accounts with Capital Bank, that's how they did it, which the 620 million Ghana cedis Bank of Ghana liquidity support was transferred to, while others were carried in jute bags to Atuesian. And in terms of the payment of the 90 million Ghana cedis to the state, how did he do it? What were his attempts, at least, to find out how we got here? He earlier paid 30 million Ghana cedis upfront in December 2022. Since that time, he made an additional payment of 5 million Ghana cedis, bringing the total to 35 million Ghana cedis. Now we're talking 90 million Ghana cedis. So you're looking at a deficit of about 55 million Ghana cedis. And the lifeline, how long has this lasted? In May 2023, he was given up until the 4th of July 2023 to liquidate his assets and pay the state the remaining 55 million Ghana cedis. And guess what? This deadline elapsed without any payment made. And that is the tail of the tape when it comes to Atuesian and how things have turned out. You know, going to prison, going to jail, it's not something you would wish even on your worst enemy. No. But again, you look at the timelines and things that have happened. He's been afforded ample opportunity. I feel for his family. No one wants that to happen to any member of the family. But at the same time, the state must crack the whip. And I even feel that in this instance, he was given much longer a rope than others were. But I have a question. What happened to the two others? Is it that they were star witnesses or, they entered some plea bargain? What is happening with those two? It'll be interesting to find out because it can't just be Atuesian, right? He was in cahoots with other people. So what has happened with them? But moving from there, I want to segue quickly into the next bit I want to talk about, which is Galamsey. And the back and forth, the ping pong between Professor Frimpong Boateng and the AG, and something somewhere doesn't add up for me. I'm going to lay it bare, and you form your own conclusions. So if you look at his report, Prof's report has come to the fore again on illegal mining. According to Prof, officials at the presidency were heavily involved in Galamsey. NPP bigwigs had orchestrated his ousting because he was not in agreement with them on some of the shady things happening. The allegations of 500 missing excavators, according to him, were untrue, and leading MPP officials served as legal counsel for Galamsey suspects. We've been told of Chinese and others who came into the country, and we know of the names already, who stood for them, who served as legal counsel for them, members of the MPP. Then he spoke of an MP selling illegally acquired concessions at 200,000 Ghana cedis. These were the claims he made. Now, let's find out. The AG, in his reply, says it's crucial. After a careful study of the report, the various documents and pen drives submitted to the police, we do not find any evidence in support of the allegations made against the person cited in the report, with the exception of 3 of the accused persons. In fact, the AG calls the report empty. That is what he says. Let's go to the next slide. Now, it also mentions that they are unable to recommend the prosecution of any of the persons cited in the report. That is the Attorney General's office. And the AG awaits the outcome of the investigations being conducted in the case involving the 3 other accused persons. Interesting, no? But let's look at some of the dynamics, those who were involved in the accusations leveled against them. So 9 persons were cited in the report as being involved in illegal mining activities. Then we have 3 alleged to be involved in the sale of excavators. And then another 3 said to have done acts or committed acts which directly or indirectly inhibited Professor Frimpong Boateng in his fight against illegal mining while he was still at post. Let's go to the next slide. But then in his list of evidence presented, this is what he puts forward. A compilation of online publications by a news portal referencing some of what had happened. A compilation of signed letters from the Forestry Commission granting approval for the issuance of entry permits to various companies to conduct exploratory activities in specific forest reserves. A compilation of an updated list of small-scale miners permitted to work as of the 7th of July 2020. All of this. He provided a statement given to the police by one of the accused persons with a bank statement of account and deposit slips, evidence. A decision by Shraj in a case filed against Professor Frimpong Boateng by one Arnold Agbodo on concessions granted to the professor's son, and a compilation of excavators kept at aviation in Adenta. Let's go to the next slide. Then we come back to the AG, and according to his office, quote, apart from the statement of one of the accused persons and the attached statements of account from a bank which provides some evidence, none of the above-mentioned documents provide any relevant information. Note that, any relevant information in support of the allegations made in the report by the professor. Wow. Next slide. Again, it is recorded that several attempts by the police to obtain further information from Frimpong Boateng to substantiate the allegations made in the report and to assist them to conduct further investigations proved futile. The professor refused to provide any further information to the police, and he also declined to give a written statement claiming his report was, quote, an embodiment of his statement and all the information he has on the allegations. And let me just make this point. When the good old professor put out what he did, what was the response from the presidency? What was the response from staffers at the presidency? What was the response from bigwigs of the MPP? Of course, if you come at him like that, how can he even be willing to give further information? In fact, he talks about this report having been there gathering dust for 2 years, a report that the chief of staff had been aware of. So what would be the incentive for someone like this who has been hounded, bludgeoned bloody, have to, come back and say, okay, I'm willing to give you any further information. And now we're being told that upon all the piles of information, it is empty. Well, just for you to know. Let's go to the next slide. Having left that scene, Galamsey, and I brought it up because guess what? We see what Galamsey is doing in our country, the illegal mining. I don't know how we're going to resolve it because our political actors are neck deep. In fact, eyebrow deep in it. But like I started with that quote at the beginning, if people like me, if people like you do not say anything, then we have no business complaining. So now let's wrap with this. Many of you are not taking notice of this, but our teachers and our nurses are leaving the country in droves. And bit by bit, If we're not careful, we may get to the point where you even go to a hospital facility and you can't even get assistance. The right people. I mean, let me just cite an example. Mohbad in Nigeria, supposedly the nurse who injected him was not properly, trained or did not have the right certification. You don't want that to happen to you, but that's the slippery slope we're on. And interestingly, when you talk about some of these things, people will tell you, oh, we produce about 30,000 nurses and all of that. So if 10,000 leave, or if the teachers, if a certain number leave, it doesn't mean much. Really? I don't know which thinking these people put into such comments, but time will tell. If you go to hospital and you get the needed treatment. There was a time I went to hospital at dawn during the COVID era. I had to wait 4 hours for a doctor. I had to leave. That is what it is. And if you have the wherewithal, the money, then you might have to go to a private facility or some place with top-notch facilities like the University of Ghana Medical Center. But are you ready? Do you have what it takes to pay for such services? How about the masses? How about ordinary people? And that is why I bring this up. Now, looking at the exodus, as of the 8th of September 2023, 2,000 nurses had left Ghana to seek greener pastures abroad. The source, the health ministry. Remember that as of last year, in the first quarter alone, 3,000 nurses had left. Those are the startling figures. By the 5th of October 2023, in terms of teachers, 10,000 of them had relocated to the UK alone. No, I'm not talking about Canada, Australia, US, no. UK alone, 10,000. That's according to the National Teaching Council. And yet we have a paucity of quality leaders here, or teachers and nurses. Let's go to the next slide. So why are they leaving? Simple. Low salaries. And they've complained that just do a little bit about this. Poor infrastructure, delayed promotion, the politics, the bureaucracy, rising cost of living, and the economic hardship. We can't run away from it. Inflation alone has done a job on many of us in terms of our incomes. How can you overlook this? And when they get the opportunity, who are we to tell them not to go? We must be patriotic, but at the same time, like some will say, with patriotism we go chop. Next slide. According to the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association, between January and July 2023, nurses that sought clearance to leave Ghana for greener pastures, over 10,209 to be specific. The number of nurses cleared to leave, 4,000. That's a percentage of 39.2%. This is staggering, and I do not know whether we don't see it, but the powers that be, we are putting out these things so that action can be taken, because and I keep saying, for some of these elites in society, the politicians and the rest, you may go for your routine checkups outside, like that CDD fellow mentioned. But if there's an emergency, you will fall on the same systems we fall on. And that day, you may see that what the ordinary man goes through, what the ordinary woman goes through, what the ordinary child goes through is not the best of situations. Next slide. Now, is it an old problem? Look at it. 2013, an estimated 33,185 teachers had abandoned their posts in recent years, quote, to seek greener pastures elsewhere. That was according to NAT at the time. In 2022, 59.9% of practicing nurses intended to leave the country, according to a survey. Practically 60%, that is 6 out of every 10, want to leave the country. How can we be like this? To conclude, let's go to the next slide. Now, in terms of the same exodus, according to Dr. Pakwesi Beidu, Ashanti Regional President of the Ghana Medical Association, in June 2022, this is what he said. About 10,727 nurses had been at home, and unable to find employment since 2019. You remember my conversation some time back with a nurse, a male nurse in the UK, left Ghana earning about 500 to 700 cedis. There, he was earning the equivalent of about 50,000 cedis a month. Of course, you may talk about taxes, accommodation, and everything, but he's still better off. Can we do something better for them? I was earning more washing cars in the UK. This is what he said. Washing cars in the UK. He was earning more than, being a nurse. I was making more than £2,000 a month, whereas my salary here was not even $1,000. Ghana is not poor. We are not even rich. We are wealthy. We're spoiled for natural resources. We have the human resource here. Something obviously is not going right. But Ghana 4, I started talking about speaking up, And I'll end with this quote. We cannot be mere consumers of good governance. The good governance we talk about, we cannot be mere consumers of it. We must be participants. Mr. President said not spectators, right? We must be participants. We must be co-creators, because good governance doesn't just happen. And these problems we are facing, whether it is Galamsey, whether it is the exodus of nurses and teachers, it can only be resolved if we speak up and hold the feet of those who are in power to the fire of accountability. That is a quote there, as far as the co-creators, Rohini Nilekani. And these are my blunt thoughts for you, Ghana, for shared with you, raw, hot, and edited, undiluted. As always, God richly bless our motherland, Ghana, and make her great and strong.